un momento prego, la chiamano per una collettiva. Bleiben Sie bitte am Apparat, Sie werden für ein Konferenzgespräch verlangt. Un instant s'il vous plaît, on vous demande pour une conversation conférence.
Pronto? Ciao Poppy! Adesso vi passo Clara!
We're going on a tour around the world. It'll take a bit of time because the world's quite big.
È una conferenza telefonica.
It's a conference call where I give a strong spiritual thought that we can live together. When we call the zones and they answer, "Hello, how are you?" So it's the life of a family. It's wonderful.
Meraviglia. Aveva per scopo di...
Its aim is to help us go on a holy journey, a journey towards holiness.
Immaginate una ragazza innamorata.
Imagine a young girl who is in love, with a love that is her first love. The purest kind of love, a love as yet undeclared, but which is already burning in her soul. There's a difference. A young girl here on earth who is in love has before her eyes the image of the one she loves. Instead, this girl doesn't see her beloved. She doesn't hear or touch him. She isn't aware of his fragrance with her human senses, but rather with the senses of her soul, through which love with a capital L has entered and has taken complete possession of her.
I can hardly believe it. It has been 80 years since the 7th of December 1943, the day Chiara Lubich consecrated herself to God forever, a date that is considered the official beginning of the Focolare movement. So it would be impossible for us not to dedicate our link-up to this special day, but above all, to what has come about as a consequence of this day, and which has great value for individuals and communities all over the world. Just think of all the things that are happening in the movement all over the world today, just as they did in the past. So we want to remember these things by following a pilgrimage that Margaret, Karram and Jesús Morán have been making in Italy for this very occasion. They went with the International Centre and representatives from the different zones of the world. Clearly, it will be a link-up enriched by the many contributions that you yourselves have sent us in recent days. So I'd say, let's start right away, and I'll hand over to Annalisa Innocenti of our communication office, and we'll see each other later in the auditorium. Welcome to this special link-up, and enjoy the trip.
Che sia un'esperienza di unità, di vera fraternità, di amore.
We want this to be an experience of unity among us, of true fraternity, of mutual love being lived. With this invitation, Margaret Karram launched this pilgrimage, in which also the journey, travelling together, gives meaning to each step and to the whole journey. Walking together becomes a spiritual exercise, an experience of repentance, of forgiveness, of thanksgiving for these 80 years of the movement's life. There are 103 participants from 39 countries. They are members of the Focolare Council and the people responsible for the different geographical areas. The gathering is in Assisi, but why Assisi? Because after Trent, this city is also linked to the founders of the Focolare movement. In fact, Silvia Lubich, when she was a teacher at the Opera Serafica, the school for orphans run by the Capuchin Fathers in Cognola near Trent, she was asked to collaborate with the Franciscan Third Order. The radical life of the saints of Assisi so fascinated the young Sylvia that she decided to choose the Italian name Clara, which translates as Claire. The participants of the pilgrimage visited places full of meaning in Assisi and were accompanied by the Franciscan friars, who invited them to look at the works of art, but also to be attentive with their eyes to what God is suggesting in their hearts. They also gave their testimony of life through the incarnation and the modernity of their spirituality. And so the dialogue became an exchange of gifts between old and new charisms.
At
the convent of St. Clare, the mother abbess of the Poor Clares, Sister Clare Agnes, welcomed them. She emphasized the urgency of implementing the charism of unity, precisely because of the tragedy the world is experiencing today. Then she reflected on two key concepts for St. Clare, which are inseparable from one another: holy unity and highest poverty. Unity is holy because it comes from above, but it cannot be achieved without poverty. If you are not poor, you cannot take a step towards becoming a greater us. A stone's throw from St. Clare's, near the shrine of the Spoliazione, or stripping, Bishop Sorrentino of Assisi was waiting for them. The place of the stripping, as the name itself says, is the place where St. Francis stripped himself of his clothes in front of his father, and through that act he stripped himself of all that he was and had. He passed through the door of the bishop's house, welcomed by the then Bishop Guido, and chose God alone. According to the bishop, a gesture in which we can also find many answers for the numberless, profound crises the world is experiencing today.
St. Francis made his choice that day. He had no family, he had no inheritance. His inheritance is Jesus Christ, and his family is the Church. Here, for once in history, institution and charism came together in the same fire. Bishop Guido and St. Francis of Assisi both said yes to the Spirit. And because of this, as it was for you 80 years ago, and for Francis 800 years ago, this great movement was born and is still continuing to inspire the Church and history.
Siamo sulle orme di Francesco.
Then Bishop Sorrentino invited everyone to cross the ancient entrance gate to the bishop's house, the very gate through which Francis passed and which recent excavations have brought to light. He invited them to make this gesture, doing just as Francis did at that time, leaving aside everything that does not belong to God and putting God back at the center of our lives. The gesture of stripping continued at the shrine of Rivo Torto, where another aspect was experienced, a penitential gesture and a request for forgiveness that each person made personally and in the name of the whole movement that they represent.
We ask for forgiveness for the times when we haven't witnessed to communion, to fraternity, to the risen Lord in our midst. You know everything, Lord. You know that I love you.
We've discriminated against people unjustly.
We ask for forgiveness for the abuses that have been committed.
I would like to ask the Lord for forgiveness for all the things we haven't done. I would like to ask forgiveness for the times when our brothers and sisters of various churches within the movement didn't feel loved and considered. I ask for forgiveness, Lord, for all the times that we went to different countries and didn't enculturate ourselves. We ask for forgiveness for not having taken care of creation.
San Francesco è definito uomo di pace.
Saint Francis is defined as a man of peace, not so much because he spoke of peace, but above all because he lived it. And at a time of atrocious suffering, he was able to write a hymn of praise to God the Creator, the true source of peace. He wrote his wonderful Canticle of the Creatures. And today, in a world torn apart, it invites us to look to the future with eyes of hope.
Most High, all-powerful, good Lord, yours is the praise, the glory, and the honour, and every blessing.
It was the words of his Canticle of the Creatures that echoed that afternoon at a time devoted to a moment of reflection and prayer for peace. They were joined by many friends who share the Focolare commitment to fraternity. They included representatives of religious institutes and charisms, Christians of various churches, and faithful of different religions. Gen Rosso's international band was also present.
Pace, peace, salam, shalom.
Where are you, my friend? I seek you along the city streets. Close by, far away, I don't find you. I look up, and together with many I say, I believe. Lord, from this city, beacon of humanity, make us instruments of unity.
In this moment of a meeting of peace, I send you my greetings for the 80th anniversary of the birth of the movement. It's a movement which hasn't transmitted only peace, tranquility and faith to its believers, but also to its friends of various religious faiths, with whom they come together for interfaith dialogue. In this way, they are building not just a better world and a better future, but also a better present for all of us, for the whole of humanity and for the universe.
On this 80th anniversary of the birth of the Focolare movement, I'm very happy to accept the invitation to be part of this special day that we've celebrated together. I wanted, and I ask this of you too, to return to the depths of your heart and say, people, wake up, go back to your humanity, because humanity is at the basis of everything. We will not succeed in creating peace if we don't let words come from our heart, which speak to us day and night, evening, morning. We want one humanity where there's love for the other, which puts into practice the saying which is so deeply part of our three religions. Love your neighbor as yourself. It is mentioned by Moses in the Bible. Our rabbis remembered it at the beginning of the modern era. And obviously these words of Jesus are present in the writings of the New Testament. And they're also mentioned by Muslims. All of us are united around this precept, which I would call the cry from the heart for people. Wake up, leave aside your little or great rivalries. Go back to being a human person, because that is what you were born for, and this is your reason for existing, and to take delight in this world that the Lord has given us as a gift.
フォコラーレ運動は世界中に広がる平和と愛情、友愛を広く分かち合う素晴らしい団体です。
The Focolare movement is a wonderful organization which is spread in the whole world, and it contributes on a large scale to peace, love, and fraternity. The spirit and the people of the movement are very important because there are many conflicts and people who are suffering in the world. Our wish is for you to continue to share this spirit of unity and of compassion with many people.
あなたたちと一緒に歩んでまいりたいと思います。
Look up, all people. It is your time, time for fraternity. These are words we've just heard in the song, but they are also the tireless efforts of so many people for so long in many parts of the world.
Я так бачу, тепер на Україні так живемо, що саме важливіше.
I think that two things are important for our lives in Ukraine. The first thing that we can do for peace, so that peace will prevail in our country, is to be sure that we have peace in our own hearts and to try to spread this peace to everyone we meet, to believers, to various people. This is the first thing, to create peace wherever we are. The second thing is to live as a community, to create a community in which people can participate, so as to share their joys and their sorrows. These are the most important things for us in Ukraine today.
We are part of the National Commission of the Movement for Unity in Politics
of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
My brother here is a member of the opposition, and I am in the majority party. But in the name of unity in diversity, we work in unity to serve the Congolese people.
We share this experience with other people from our country because a few days ago we had a political retreat meeting of the Movement for Unity in Politics, which brought together many other representatives of different parties. We understood that our country is our common home. If it burns, it's our country that is burning. A country for the opposition doesn't exist. A country for the majority party doesn't exist. We have to be guided by unity, as Clara said.
Hello, everyone. I am Li Yahui, Teresa Li. I come from Taiwan. I'm a Buddhist, and I work as an English teacher. My commitment for unity means that in my everyday life, I look for the goodness and the love in the people around me, in my family, my relatives, my friends and colleagues. Love conquers everything. So when there are difficulties, the art of loving reminds me to always start again and to face difficulties with mercy. In this way, I can grow spiritually and also be a support for my family. And in my work, I can transform challenges into a greater love so that others can see my acts of love. It could be a greeting or a smile, so as to sow love and unity.
Ciao, sono Susanna.
Hello, I am Susanna, a volunteer from Lampedusa. Lampedusa is an island in the Mediterranean, and because of its location, it is a gateway for migrants arriving by sea. This summer, because of the huge increase of migrants, we found ourselves in a really dramatic situation. Thousands of people had arrived, about 7,000, more than us, because Lampedusa has about 6,000 inhabitants. The first reception center was on the verge of collapse. It couldn't accommodate anymore. So our parish priest, Don Carmelo, made a space available to welcome them. And we immediately got active via the WhatsApp groups. as one does in a community. Some of our people immediately brought games, some food, some brought medicine or clothes. We all gathered there. We felt completely lost in that emptiness because we were really in direct contact with suffering. I remember children waving at us because they wanted more pizza. I also remember, for example, the expression of a woman who was living with a baby in her arms, and she was barefoot. So, instinctively, I took off my flip-flops to give them to her. Her expression has stayed with me because she did nothing but thank me and thank me. And that is the most beautiful memory I have. These moments where our yes is this. We made the word fraternity come alive. In that moment, we put our yes into action with all our hearts.
Il pellegrinaggio è un viaggio che a volte apre.
A pilgrimage is like a journey which at times opens up undiscovered panoramas. Now, through the language of art, of dance and of music, we want to narrate the story of Chiara Lubic's yes. And in her yes, the yes of all of us. Tempora is an artistic presentation, and we could say it is like a journey which takes us from our meeting with the other, which might bring out diversities, tensions and conflicts, to the experience of the suffering that we can have in us and around us, and then to the choice of love, drawn from the gospel, which is capable of transforming the situations to be healed, to turn on a light, even in the darkness. And now we're on the second stage of our pilgrimage. We've arrived in Loreto, which welcomes us on a cold and rainy day. Loreto is a small town in central Italy overlooking the Adriatic Sea. This basilica behind me, built between 1469 and 1587, houses what is thought to have been the Holy House of Nazareth. Tradition has it that in 1291, when the Crusaders were forced to leave the Holy Land, the Holy House was transported here. But when was Loreto first linked with the story of Chiara Lubich? It was October 1939. The Second World War had just begun, and Chiara, then Sylvia Lubich, was invited to a conference organised by Catholic Action here in Loreto. So strong was Chiara's desire not to miss an opportunity to get to know God, that she managed to obtain permission from her father Luigi to come here to Loreto, which meant a long journey. It was more than 450 kilometres from Trent to Loreto. And it was in this holy house that Chiara Lubich discerned her vocation, an intuition which would later lead to her total donation to God on the 7th of December, 1943. But let's hear directly from Chiara's own voice the story of that moment in a talk she gave in 1989 to a group of young people in the little town of Monte in Switzerland.
As you know, I was 19 years old, so I was younger than you. I was a gen. I would have been a gen if the gen had existed. But I'd never thought much about my calling. You know how it is. It's not that one thinks about these things. Some do think, others don't. Instead, there in that small house, as you know, I understood this fourth way, which was none of the ways that existed up until that time, but it was the one that God had planned for me. Not for me as an individual, but for me together with many. It was a fourth way in the church that had a lot to do with this small house of Loreto, with the life of these three persons. And then, as you know, I was at the back of the church, and there I understood that there would be a group of virgins. They were the Focolerini, because they are virgins. The Focolerini who naturally were the soul of the whole movement. Now, we can't minimize this divine experience that I lived. Absolutely not, because it overwhelmed me. The divine crushed me. It really reduced me to nothing. I cried and cried every time I stepped into that small house. I understood, and I almost felt as though I were in the midst of Mary, Joseph, Jesus, Mary who sang, Mary who, I imagined her singing a lullaby to baby Jesus, Joseph working. I felt as though I were inside this reality. But I can't reduce this experience to the focolare. It was also the whole work of Mary, because the movement is a small house of Nazareth. It's made up of priests, of lay people, virgins. Like Mary, it's made up of married people. So also the whole movement. In Mary, there are also the religious, men and women. In baby Jesus, there is everything.
Chiara Lubich qui a Loreto ha intuito la sua vocazione.
Chiara Lubich here in Loreto had an intuition of her vocation. But that intuition, we heard it now, also includes everything else that was born from her yes. The movement, the different vocations. We asked some of the participants in the pilgrimage from various vocations what it means for them to come to Loreto today.
Living today with the whole of the movement was a very beautiful and a very strong experience. A reminder of what Chiara lived. For us as religious, the little house is similar to an icon, precisely because it makes us enter into the experience of God. But not only because there are virgins who live there together, but rather because there is the experience of the divine which permeates the human. And therefore the divine reveals the human and the human reveals the divine. I think It was the Holy Spirit who, giving the charism to Chiara, made her understand this depth, and therefore the experience of the movement as she has given it to us.
Juste avant ce moment du oui, nous avons eu un petit moment artistique.
Just before this moment of saying yes, we had a short artistic presentation, and I was struck by the idea that was shared with us, that a musical work, to be performed over time, needs the heart of each person. It was with this spirit that I went to the place where the family of Nazareth is said to have lived, so as to say my yes. For me, my yes is one that is sensitive to the world of culture and wants to transmit this charism, this spirituality, to that specific world.
So now we want to repeat this yes. It's not only a personal yes, but a yes on behalf of all the focolaries and all the communities of the movement in the world, so as to be an expression of this light and that fire that comes from the house of Nazareth. Just as Clara saw from the very beginning, we can continue, as St. Francis did, whose fire is still alive after 800 years, in the same way today too, the fire of our yes can always remain alive.
God continues to call throughout time and throughout history. Our part is to reply with our yes, wherever we are, in social and cultural contexts that are very different from one another. Let's listen to them.
I'm a member of the Anglican Church and a volunteer working in New Humanity. I express my yes to God by working for unity through dialogue with Indigenous peoples here in Australia. I've been learning about Aboriginal cultures while working in engagement and consultation through my work in heritage. I've also had the opportunity to share some of my experiences of working with Aboriginal people with our Focolari community.
At present, there is pressure on youth from various social, economic, and academic insecurities. I am also suffering from all of these insecurities. Nowadays, I feel like a new responsibility has come up. Apart from my personal responsibilities, I am also responsible for the transformation of my society. We always blame the government, especially the local government, for not being responsible for the welfare and quality well-being of its people. But it's important to think about how responsible you feel you are to bring change in society. It's not possible to bring change by a single entity. We need support from other personnel as well. So unity is needed for change. I found solace in the Mariapolis. I distanced myself a bit from that chaotic state of mind and tried to embrace the beauty of living the present moment. In various parts of the program, we talked about universal brotherhood and sisterhood. Following the concept of universal brotherhood, if we work together in unity, if we work together in solidarity, change is possible. Thank you.
I play my part in building a united world by spending meaningful time with the children and elderly in my community. Together with some friends, we plan meaningful activities for these seniors and kids. We realized that what they needed most is a listening ear, and it was important for us to hold meaningful conversations with them, instead of having to rush through the activities that we had planned. We believe that through serving others, loving everyone around us, we can find joy also for ourselves by spreading God's love to those people who are waiting to experience it.
I did an act of love. I often help my parents to set the table before lunch or dinner, and also before breakfast. Sometimes I do another act of love. Once I gave a gift to my sister.
Ciao.
I'm Joachim from Argentina. We're a group of young people who are following a course of formation to say our yes in the Focolare community.
I'm discovering what it means to say yes in order to build unity through my limits. When I think I can't cope, I stop and say yes. I don't stop there for long. I remember those moments when many impossibles became possibles in me, in my relationship with others. There, I find a strength that pushes me on not to stop, not to give in, as long as there is someone in society who is still excluded, someone who is excluded from my heart. I want to open my heart so that all may be one.
E siamo arrivati all'ultima tappa del pellegrinaggio.
We've come to the last stage of our pilgrimage, Rome. We're on the Appian Way, an ancient Roman road. Great witnesses of faith who came to Rome, like St. Peter and St. Paul, travelled on roads like this. Following in their footsteps, those participating in our pilgrimage are visiting places that are meaningful and which today, too, witness to the authenticity of the evangelical life of the early Christian communities. They were made up of people called by God and sent by Him to take His message. They were authentic, courageous witnesses to the point of martyrdom.
Anche a noi oggi.
Today, too, we are called to be authentic and courageous witnesses of the love of God, witnesses of unity in the small and big choices of everyday life.
My experience of very demanding dialysis treatment over the last 7 years has been full of graces flowing from my continuing yes to God's will. I build unity in my dialysis clinic. At a certain point, as an act of love, I put myself forward to be the patient representative on the management committee, which gives me the opportunity to build unity with both patients and nursing staff in the clinic. On one occasion, a nurse shared with me that another patient experienced being uplifted every time he saw me walk into the clinic. When I went to see him, he said that the words from me were not necessary. Just seeing me helped him accept his own treatment. Later, I observed him saying goodbye to each patient, making connection with eye contact and a broad smile. I now had a partner in living mutual love for unity in the clinic. Putting the gift of Chiara's charism into practice enables me to live the present moment and to start again in building unity in our clinic.
We are Jenny, Ana Maria, Maria Luz, and Javier. We are from Argentina.
One day, with Javier, we decided to go back to my hometown, to Lamud, in the north of Peru, where my parents were, and so we came here. We started a new life here, with my daughters and with a mission, without ever imagining what would happen next.
We discovered a suffering in this small town, the situation of the older people. The young people go away to study and the elderly remain abandoned at home, without even a decent bed to die in. So we said to ourselves, we have to do something. We can't sit idly by. The ideal taught us to die for our people, and we have to die for them.
And so we began to dream of founding a retirement home, inspired by this beautiful ideal that spurs us on every day, the ideal of unity. Now we are giving our lives day by day for these elderly people who need us. My family and I remain steadfast and faithful to this dream that has come true.
In my own context, my yes to God is expressed in my community, where I have a lot of poor people. I try to put smiles in their faces by providing most of their needs as much as I could. Secondly, I live my commitment to unity in my parish. I join my catechist to teach small children, and I use the dice of love to teach them to love one another, forgive one another, love their enemies, and see Jesus come out forward.
Hi, my name is William Calvo. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan in the Department of American Culture. You know, Chiara's choice of God, done way before I ever knew about her, had changed my life as a person, as a civilian, as a teacher, as a researcher. The spirituality of unity brought into my consciousness that God is love, that God loved me, and there is a plan of love for humanity, for each culture, for each person. This is truly a spiritual journey, but it's also an intellectual one. For example, it's about how I do research, how I engage with people, how I do questions, how do I listen. I discovered that it's also changed how I write or theorize about the world around me. My work as a researcher brings me to the edge of a society that sometimes looks like it's collapsing, discriminated, ostracized, judged, misunderstood. And there I found in Jesus forsaken a spiritual and intellectual key to discover and decode the beauty of humanity. One that believes deep inside that a new world is possible.
This pilgrimage took place to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the birth of the Focolare movement, and exactly on the 7th of December, the participants had the huge gift of being received in audience by Pope Francis.
So here we are. As we promised, we come back to the auditorium of the International Centre. Right now we're live in Rocca di Papa, and it's about 20:47, 48. This is proof that we are right on time and alive right around the world. Welcome to all of you. So then, as you can see, right next to me, there's Margaret Karram and Jesús Morán. Soon we'll listen to them, but in the meantime, we'd like to greet the Cardinal Mario Grepp, who's the General Secretary of the Synod, together with the religious and civil authorities who are present. Welcome here. As we promised at the very beginning, here we've got it right now, the people who were present in the pilgrimage. So welcome to all of you as well, and welcome to all of you who've come, who are part of the link up from all over the world, and there's so many of you. So right now, a huge hug with so much love to the Holy Land. I know that you are all linked to so many different places with translations in Arabic through Zoom. To you there, a very special hug. And Sydney, it's already Sunday morning there. So it's 5:30 there. You are heroic. We greet you with another huge hug. And also, Then we go to Argentina. It's 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon or Saturday afternoon. And we know that in the little citadel of O'Higgins, they're celebrating the Shabbat together with the Rabbina Shemi, with 45 Jewish friends and 10 Muslims. To you also, a great greeting from all of us. And then so many of you have written to us that are gathered in communities, in groups, so many different countries of the world. We can't obviously talk about all of them, Pakistan, Tanzania, Spain, Burkina Faso, truly Italy, and then so many other countries around the world that we can't really mention here. To all of you a huge hug. So then, Margaret and Jesús, we could not but continue with you to talk about this Roman stage of the pilgrimage, also because Annalisa left us with a lot of curiosity. We really would like to know more about the audience with Pope Francis precisely on the 7th of December. So before we go any further, I'd like to ask you, Margaret, just a personal impression about this meeting with the Pope.
It was a really extraordinary meeting, something we'll never forget, and I feel it really marks an important step in our history of the movement. It was a very moving thing, the fact that on the 7th of December, to be there in the heart of the church with the Pope, it was a moment of great grace.
A moment of grace, they will have a chance to really taste and go through. Well, let's listen to what the Pope said, a little bit of it at least. I invite you to work so that the dream of a fully synodal and missionary church may be increasingly realized. Start out from your communities, fostering in them a style of participation and co-responsibility, places in which we respect and care for one another, with particular attention to those who are weaker and to those most in need of support. Please sow unity by bringing the gospel without ever losing sight of the work of incarnation that God continues to wish to accomplish in us and around us through His Spirit, so that Jesus may be good news for everyone, no one excluded, and that all may be one. After 2,000 years of Christianity, the longing for unity continues to assume the form in many parts of the world of an agonizing cry that demands a response. Today, unfortunately, the world is still riven by many conflicts and continues to need artisans of fraternity and peace between people and between nations. The snare of spiritual worldliness is always lurking. Therefore, you too need to know how to react decisively, consistently, and realistically.
Benedica vos omnipotens Deus, Pater, Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.
So, Margaret, we've seen some of the words that Pope Francis told us. We couldn't really listen to the whole talk. We can find that in many places. They're very strong words, even for the historic context we're living in and for the movement. So, which are the words that touched you in a particular way? And what value has all this for the movement for the charism today?
Many things struck me, but to sum it up, the Pope spoke to us about three particular key ideas. The first, he spoke about ecclesial maturity, and he emphasized there the importance of finding new synodal forms of participating, of being co-responsible. And for us as a movement, it's very important that we can walk together with the Church in this synodal journey. So I think this ecclesial maturity asks of us as a movement to take some new steps. The second thing, faithfulness to the charism. And so to be faithful to the charism, if we think of these 80 years of life, the Pope said, he emphasized in a very strong way the most important thing, the strongest thing for us, the most essential, he said, go back to the gospel. For me, for all of us, I think to go back to the gospel means to go back to living the gospel in a radical way, in a serious way, because this is what the world needs today. And the Pope reminded us of a sentence that Clara said. Clara said, leave to those who follow you only the gospel. So for me, this was a really strong point that was emphasized to say Clara in 43 was alone. She chose God. She consecrated her life to God. She gave her life to God, to humanity in God, this suffering humanity. And today, God is asking us to say a new yes, living the gospel in a radical way. And the third thing, the Pope said in a very strong way, almost like a real mandate he was giving us to live for peace, to take on a commitment to live for peace. You can imagine how strongly I feel this. I feel it so strongly in my heart. And I felt that beyond this invitation of the Pope, but as a movement, we've got to take up these words as a mandate from the Pope. It's a moment of great darkness for humanity because of what we're living, but we have to try and to ask ourselves, how can we live for peace? What strategy, what ways can we have to be able to achieve more and more these, to sow peace, to make new ways of.
Thank you, Margaret. I think that this is really a moment to begin this walk together. Jesús, instead, the audience with Pope Francis certainly was the apex of a moment, of a whole pilgrimage, as we've seen, a pilgrimage that's lasted several days. What impression do you carry with you? What really struck you the most? Well, let's say that a lot has already been said. What we've seen are wonderful. Well done, by the way. Well done to all those who have worked at this, because what we've seen really expresses what we've done. But just to give you an impression that I can remember clearly is that just like acquiring once again the gift of the charism of unity, take it back, this reality, so that we can give it again to the world today, precisely in this very particular context of conflicts, with a new zeal, new courage and conviction. We needed to be convinced of how important the charism is today. For me, it's been like being reborn church, to be reborn humanity. This, I won't add any more. Do you know, Jesus, what you're saying of taking up again our own charism happened also in many different moments during these days of the 7th of December, because the characteristic is that the 7th of December wasn't just this, but was characterized by many, many celebrations, masses, prayers all over the world, precisely to thank God for these 80 years of life. And so obviously there was then a very special Mass in Rome, to which many of you were present for the pilgrimage in the Saint Mary Major. And a lot of encouragement came from what Cardinal Farrell spoke. So we would also like to just mention a few words. Therefore, reject all forms of discouragement. Never doubt that the Lord inspired Clara with a specific way of living the faith and of following Jesus. This is destined to remain and to continue to bear much fruit. The ideal that Clara entrusted to you remains always relevant, even in today's secularized world, which is so different from that of the beginning of the movement.
You are near, you are here. Io con te
So we've lived also a little bit of the celebration that took place at the St. Mary Major and this great encouragement of which we spoke earlier on. In the meantime, I've moved up. Margaret and Jesús, I haven't forsaken you. Remain there. I'll come back to you. But I wanted to hear also something, a voice from someone who was there present in the pilgrimage. So I would start immediately with Werner and Mirvet. Here they are. Let's give them a round of applause. So, Mirvet is Syro-Orthodox from Syria and lives and works here at the International Center of the Focolare, while Werner is Swiss, is part of this Swiss Reformed Church and lives precisely in Switzerland, in Monte. Now, you did not participate in the pilgrimage, but you were present at the audience with Pope Francis. What meaning had for you being part of this moment? It was something very special. Obviously, when I greeted the Pope, I took that opportunity also to tell him that I was from the Reformed Church, also because I wanted to thank him for all that he does for the unity of churches, also to tell him that I'm right there behind him with this. What really struck me is that I've seen a real Christian, a man of God, a person that embraces the whole of humanity and doesn't leave anyone behind. So I returned to Switzerland and I have this family of God within me that I want to bring ahead and to bring peace wherever I am. And Margaret?
For me, it was very strong. As soon as the Pope walked in, I felt it was like hearing the voice of Jesus who said to Peter, "Confirm your brothers." It was the 80th anniversary, and so it was as if he was confirming in us our call to say a new yes to God and to renew this yes so as to live the gospel. As he asked us, he almost told us the story of Clara, and he emphasized the importance of living the gospel. And he spoke about unity, which is harmony. And this is beautiful. To many different people and to be able to enjoy in the beauty of one another. And then he also sent us out to go and to work for peace. But it was very strong because After that, Margaret shared with us this idea of drying up the tears of people who were suffering. And it made me remember the words of Clara, I'll go through the world seeking him who suffers in every moment of my life.
Thank you. This is really a great opportunity to take this commitment to dry up the tears of humanity altogether. Thank you. I continue going around, and here I am from Shirlene. You're Indian, aren't you? Here's the microphone, and you follow the movement in that small area of the whole of India and the Philippines. What we've understood from this pilgrimage, from this link-up, is how important the communities in the world of the Focolare are important, where life has gone on in every different ways. Communities that are made up also of children. And on this, I know that you wanted to tell us something specific on the life that you have ahead and the children.
Although we were living a spiritual reality of pilgrimage, but we weren't detached from the reality of the world. So in every sacred place we went to, we took there the sufferings of our peoples. And it was very strong. I think you probably, in Assisi, when we came together, and we had an afternoon that was dedicated to dialogue for peace with friends of different religions. And in that moment, I was able to share a suffering because of an act of violence that had taken place in Marawi in the south of the Philippines that very morning. And in a very unexpected way, when the program was over, a Muslim man who was from that city came up to me and he thanked me because I remembered and I'd prayed for this city of Marawi. And so in that moment, I was also able to present a letter that was written by Indian children of different religions during an event that we had in Mumbai, together with many other inter-religious realities like Shanti Ashram, Arigato International, the United Nations, the Catholic Church, and also together with New Humanity, which is our ONG at the United Nations. But the sentence, the key to this event, was what Mahatma Gandhi said, because he said, if we want to reach true peace, we've got to begin with children. And it was the children who were the ones who took the initiative, and they wrote a letter, an appeal to all the adults, to the heads of state, leaders of the world, an appeal to stop every kind of violence or wars because of the great impact that it's having on them and on their future. And this letter now we'll present it to Pope Francis, to some of the leaders of countries, and we said we'd also present it to the leaders of our movements. So this is an initiative that's going ahead.
Children always have something to teach us, don't they? Thank you so much. Now we'll go to Africa with Raphael. Raphael, you come from Cameroon and live in Côte d'Ivoire. What struck you most of this pilgrimage? Look, Paul, being part of this pilgrimage on the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi in certain ways, like returning to the origins of the charism of unity, because we don't forget that Clara was tertiary Franciscan. Therefore, in Assisi, something that many have already said, this getting rid of everything to follow God alone, to me was a calling so that might be God working in me, within me. It's not that I'm the one who acts, but God through me. And then in Loreto, in the little house of the Holy Family, there were the the Word became flesh, the incarnation. Incarnation then today must also take different colors, the colors of the different parts of the world, of the different cultures. Because 2,000 years ago, God became a man, chose a people, but today too, the same God wants to meets every person in the world, and this means to put the gospel in all the cultures of the world. And in Rome, the meeting with the Holy Father, something really huge. Amongst many things, he asked us to continue to be builders of peace. And we know that today the world really needs of people that commit themselves to peace. And this has remained strong to me, not just because of what is happening in Holy Land, in Russia, Ukraine, but in many other parts as well, in Africa. There's so many conflicts. I could speak of the Sudan, Cameroon. So to be invited to work for peace, possibly in a network with others. And these are the things that we need to do. Thank you so much, Raphael. Thank you indeed. And we conclude this with going to Europe with Roberto. Roberto, you're Swiss in Austria. You follow the movement in Central Europe. We've heard so many things. There have been incredible days. And for you, what was the most precious thing that you take back home? Oh, so many. But I would like to say something that's a bit contradictory too, maybe. I feel a great gratitude for all the people who were not at the pilgrimage, but who went on a pilgrimage with us right through the year, when we helped each other to live as Christians, to live the gospel, to put God at the center of our life. And being there in this place is so powerful. The meeting with the Pope, I realized of the greatness, of the possibility of having this collective spirituality that we can live and allows us to live in the daily life with Jesus in our midst, and these blackened walls in that little house of Loreto, we have them in our own families, in our own cities. So this poetry of Clara, it's a bit that says Jesus in the midst is stronger than every work of art, greater than huge cities like Rome, Assisi, or Loreto. Well, like I go home knowing that I can live in my daily life with so many others the gospel. Truly great impetus to build communities, all the very best. So, Margaret, we've seen so many different impressions, so much life in this week. But after all we've seen and lived, according to you, the most beautiful wish for Christmas that is coming through, which one could that be?
Gosh, the most beautiful greeting is to really take care of one another, so that everyone can experience, all the people around us can really feel that we are close to them. A closeness of affection, but also of concrete love. Because I think that if at Christmas we all have this commitment to spread more love around us, I think peace will find its way to go ahead. And this is the most beautiful greeting I think I can give to you in this moment, saying to everybody, Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Joyeux Noël, Feliz Navidad.
I don't know any other languages, but Happy Christmas to everybody, and thank you to the whole world, because you've lived these days with us. And we really feel a great joy. The Pope said at the end, don't lose your joy. So we hope that this Christmas really can be a moment of joy for everybody. So special greetings to all of you who are following us with all our heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you. A wonderful wish, very concrete as well. So then, We've reached the moment where we need to greet each other. Like every time that we greet each other, also need to give you some notices. First of all, this link up, together with all the other link ups, as you know, can be seen again on YouTube in different languages. And if you click on the little bell, you can always remain updated with the very latest news. Then, if you want to, you can send us impressions, comments, photos, selfies that you might have taken during this last hour. You can do it through mail, WhatsApp, or else through the social channels that you can see right there on the screen. Then the next link up will be the 23rd of March 2024, always on the YouTube channel of the Link Up. And then, of course, we leave each other with all the best wishes of Christmas, but which is the best way to leave each other after all we've lived. Tonight we really journeyed together. We've gone around. We started from the yes of Clara to that yes of all of us, the communities around the world. So then, how can we continue to bring ahead building peace, as Margaret was saying? We do it greeting each other with the words of Father Fabio Ciardi, who's a theologian, expert in spiritual theology, and it's just a brief section of an article that he prepared for the Focolare.org, which was published very recently. And we felt this was really summing up and something good to take off altogether. Thank you to all of you. Happy Merry Christmas to all of you.
For 80 years, that yes has multiplied and is still resounding today in 1,000 ways. Storms are raging. The future seems uncertain. The flight can resemble a leap in the dark. Fear is paralyzing. Yet that voice continues to be heard in so many people, at times faintly, at times loudly. Give yourself to me. Give yourself to me. How? Each one discovers it slowly, but it calls for an immediate, generous, sincere, authentic yes. Thus, God continues to make himself present in the world and to build its history that will blossom into the kingdom of heaven.